Eternal optimism is we've developed this mechanism inside of us that empowers us to not only see things through a positive lens, not only see hard stuff through a lens of what's the gift in the moment. How can I use this to my advantage? How can I use this to model for my kids? How can I use this to stand up and show others that it's possible that they too can make a comeback, right? What is your mechanism for consistently learning and taking all the hard stuff and learning from it?
My friend Matt, welcome, brother.
It is a real pleasure to be here with you because life is just coming at us. Life is coming through us. Life is happening for us. And I'm just excited to be with you today, Lawrence. And just seeing you brought me a burst of energy because I know that you've been with your son and he's 3 and stuff's going on. And it's a magical time in life. So yeah, grateful to be here today.
Well, how old are your 3 daughters?
They're 8 and 7 and 5, going on 22, 21, and 17. It feels like, but yeah, they're 8, 7, and 5, and they are a real joy. Yeah.
I wonder, Matt, is it our imagination that kids are growing up much quicker today, or is that a reality with just technology and accessible information? It just seems like kids are growing up much quicker than they used to.
Does every generation have this question? I think This is a cyclical question because I'm talking to my wife this morning and she's reading an article from a place she trusts that says that girls nowadays are starting to go through puberty. Instead of around the age of 12 to 16, they're starting as early as 8 to 12 years old. And studies will show that those who start that early have psychological challenges because of, well, for whatever reason. I didn't read the whole article. We start to talk about this exact question. Is it too soon to grow up at 8? I don't know if the human brain has developed enough at 8 to go through puberty, but are there things that are causing this to come on quicker, whether it's some type of hormones in the food or whether it's the social media and being stuck to a screen? I don't know the answer, but I would say that I'm just trying to hang on wherever they're at right now and be in the moment with them, man.
That's so true. I think that is with most people that I know, the biggest challenge is just trying to be in the moment, not just with your kids, but just with life in general, with all the distractions that we have and the way you're getting pulled in so many different directions. And that is what the theme of your book, The Eternal Optimist, which I really enjoyed. I know you just published it, came out a few weeks ago, and I read it in, I think, a day and a half. It's very readable, but it's that idea of, it's a novel, but it's what I would call a philosophical novel, right? You have that idea of the typical successful, driven entrepreneur who's very successful monetarily, but he has a lot of challenges being present with his family and putting his family first.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And if those of you who are watching the recording today, I'm showing the book right now. It's called The Eternal Optimist. It's Never Too Late. And if you look carefully on the back cover, I've got 2 people that I really respect that endorse on the back. My financial coach, Justin Donald from the Lifestyle Investor Group, but also Dr. Kelly Flanagan is on there. And I mention Kelly right now, Lawrence, because I just had him for a second time on my show this morning. And we talked about this question, like, how do we learn to be present? It seems like the simplest question. But so many people are always stuck in this place of they're worried because of the future, or they're frustrated and aren't able to let go of the past. And if you think about when we are most in the flow or in the space that we can have our creative independence just flow out of us, it's in a place where we're really totally present. An example might be this. Since the last time you and I spoke, I've had a first happen in my life. I went camping in the Great Smoky Mountains here in the border of North Carolina, Tennessee, about 3 weeks ago. And I'm there with 5 of my friends who you might call like a survivalist or prepper. I mean, people they can be outside and they can survive. And I'm a rookie at this. So we're going out there and the weather forecast turns 2 days before the trip, turns to 45 degrees and nonstop rain the entire time. Right? Challenging for your first time camping.
Yeah.
The point is that I could have gone through that whole lens of this is going to be hard. This is going to be like a horrible experience. It's going to be cold, miserable, and wet. Or I could choose to go at it with, this is going to be amazing new experience. I'm here with 5 friends. It's going to be awesome. So I tried to choose like what I would say is the eternal optimist mindset, try to enjoy it, take the most from it. But being present in that moment with the friends under the tarp when it was pouring down rain, we didn't feel any stresses. I didn't feel that it was cold and wet. I was just there with my friends. So the idea, if we're talking about the lion's way, the lion, the strong, the leader, the person who is able to lead and to be completely engulfed in the moment, how do we live to be that? And that was the conversation I had on my show this morning. And I feel this is like a staple of a person who is looking to remove or lessen that stress and have more inner peace is learn to be present. So you're hitting me in a question or a thought that is really, really hyper important. And it's important to the context of this book, but I think it's important for any one of us, no matter where we are in our life. If we are truly a leader, then we are learning how to be present for those we love and those we serve. What do you think about that? Being present for those we love, those we serve might be one of the requirements, or might be one of the stipulations for being a leader, is learning to be with the people you're with. What do you think?
So it's such a great realization that I had, and it was exactly the same thing. I had a 14-year-old German Shepherd who passed away about 6 weeks ago. And I remember the last year of his life. I knew, he had a long life and he was healthy, but I knew big dogs don't live that long. So I would tell him every night, I was always say, you're such a good dog, enjoy your retirement now. We moved out of Chicago. We're in the country. I want you to relax. I've got 2 younger dogs that can protect the house, and you just relax. Like, your job's done. You've been an amazing dog. I always tell him that before I went to bed, because I wanted to tell him while he was alive, not have regrets I didn't tell him. And then he passed away, and I had this thought. There were so many times, not so many times, but there were more times than I wanted that I would be coming home from the city after a long drive, and I'd be on an annoying work call, and he would always rush towards me with a shoe in his mouth. And a lot of time I would be distracted, and I would give him just a 2-second, hey buddy, and just keep going with my annoying work calls. And I just had that thought, like, man, I'm so glad I had this realization now and not when I'm at the end of my life, that like I'm still young enough to do something about it. And that's actually a big, it might seem small to people that are listening, but it was just this realization that I go through my life, I'm on paper very successful and productive, but there's so many times where I'm distracted, and I do want, just like what you said, I want to be more present. And it's, if I want to hang out with my son and spend an hour just with him, I can't leave my phone in the same room, or it's on airplane mode. Like, it's impossible now with the distractions of technology. And it's so many times where I'm with him and I'm like, oh, I just got to get back to this guy, and I got to shoot a quick text here and just respond to this email. And it's really tough. It's so many businesses, you and I are both kind of in sales, where we deal with people, and we have kind of a different, we don't have a traditional 9-to-5 schedule. It's so difficult to be with your family and be there mentally. And that's something that I'm determined to change. So I'm so glad you brought that up.
Yes, we're in a topic right now. It's near and dear to my heart. And any of your listeners, and I know your audience really well, you got an audience that's just like you, people that are leaders. And they are, in many cases, a hard charger or ambitious or achievers, or just people that they know how to get things done. And one of the challenges of that person, if they identify as achiever, that they might be a recovering perfectionist. They might have opportunities with control things from time to time. All right. So if we look at that, being present right now, I would ask our listeners right now, what's one thing that you can do today to prioritize your child over your business, or to prioritize your significant other over that annoying work call? Because just the fact that you're calling an annoying work call, and I know what that is, because I've had those too. Like, we both have those. So if your dog is there, what's the mental tripwire that can get tripped? They can tell us, you know what? My dog right now is a bigger priority. My child is a bigger priority. What's the thing that we can do? And the first thing that comes to Matt's mind, and full transparency, this is not natural. This is hard for me to do. And still to this day, I've got to be very intentional. I sit down with my journal every morning, and Lawrence, I write down some things I'm grateful for, like 1, 2, 3 things I'm grateful for. It takes about 5 minutes. And then I write down the following question: who must I show up as today for Julie to say, Matt, you're a great listener? So I write that one question down every single morning, and it makes me pay attention to what I say matters most. And my wife does matter most, but I'm so stuck in this old thinking pattern of go and be ambitious and go and drive business and work ethic and overachieve and all that. So the key to breaking that pattern to me is consistent repetition. So I write it down every day in my journal. I'm curious how you do it. How do you, in your journey and in the way you operate, Lawrence, how do you start to prioritize or do things that really matter to you and put that ahead of work or ahead of like the old school pattern of thinking, if you get my meaning?
It's so funny. When you were talking just then, I just had triggered a memory. I've always been a big goal setter. I love the first day of the year. Sometimes I'll give it a week and I'll just be thinking for a first week. And then I like to write down a piece of paper, like my goals for the year. And I've been doing this for several decades. And I noticed this year when I did my goals, it was very interesting. For the first time, I was doing things that weren't success on paper, but it was success in life. So I was writing things like, this year, I wanted to prioritize the summer and to do things with my son. Because the last summer was, I would say, the best summer of my life, because I would take a lot of the work. I was kind of lucky in the sense that in real estate, with interest rates going up, I was just a bit slower than normal. And so it was a relatively slower summer. And I prioritized a lot. My friend has a boat, so I would either be with my wife and my friends prioritizing our marriage, and my son would be with a babysitter, or I have another friend who's building a house on a lake and would go to the beach with my son. And when I look back, I think, man, I'm turning 45 next week. And I think that was my best summer of my life. Why? Because I worked less and I was really present with the people that meant the most to me. So I realized when I was doing my goals that there were some of the goals I was writing down. I was writing down, prioritize the summer with Victor, my son, be more present when I'm with my family, be mentally there. Don't be multitasking, really trying to be present. And that's honestly one of the reasons I know you have a great podcast also called The Eternal Optimist, that doing podcast conversations like this, one of the reasons I enjoy it is because my phone is not, it's off. It's not in the same room as me. And you and I are just connected and talking. And it's like, how many times I'm at dinner with two, three friends, and I'm like, oh, I got to text this client back, and they're both playing around on Instagram or messaging someone, and they're not really being present. And it's like, man, like now when I go to dinner, I want to leave my phone in my car because I want to just talk to them and be present, take a break from my life. And it's like it's hard work because our brains are wired. I mean, these technology companies they've tapped into the most basic fundamental wiring of our brains to make all these things so addictive. And it's a constant battle. We have to fight against it. But man, of all the fights, Matt, I can't think of a more worthy fight.
Yeah. Yeah. I 100% agree. And what am I going to do about it? What am I going to take ownership of in myself that's going to help me to do what you just described that I want more than anything? And it's against the pattern that I've been doing for a long time. So if there's someone out there who might feel I have achieved, but I'm successful, and there is a bout of depression or a bout of inside of you that says something's out of alignment, that was me for a while, right? And one thing I love about our conversation, and hopefully our listeners can really hear this thought, is you've just inspired me with what I call a thinking time question. So I'm going to grab my journal out, and I'm going to turn the iPhone, I'm going to turn my timer on for 20 minutes, and I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write everything that just pours out of my heart and soul and my pen on this question. How might I work less while being more present with my family by the end of this summer? So I love those questions of how might I, so I can. I mean, how might I work less so I can be more present with my family by the end of this quarter? All right. So in the next 75 days, what am I actually going to put into play that it gives me back an hour or a few hours or a few activities with my family? And you know what? I'm going to go to work right away on what we just described as annoying work call. And I'm going to go totally Dan Sullivan, Ben Hardy on it. I'm going to go who, not how on it. And, just what else can I take off my plate and move to someone else? Right. And empower someone else, my team, to do it. So all kinds of stuff you're already inspiring. And then again, when you get with people that are always thinking about how to optimize for the things that are most important, and then you have the courage to take action, anything's possible. And that's why the book is called The Eternal Optimist. It's never too late. It doesn't matter if you feel right now, dear listener, that things have passed you by and man, I could have, should have, would have done that years ago. There's no time like right now to get started. I mean, the two best times to start were before and now, right? So might as well start now on answering one of these most important questions. What's holding you back? It's never too late.
I'm so glad you said that, because that applies to everything, right? If you're really out of shape, it's never too late. Yeah, of course, it would have been great if you had looked after your health 10 years ago, but that time's gone. Let's just look at today and what you can do for your future self tomorrow. So I love that idea of it. It's never too late, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Lawrence, again, I love to play a fully transparent game. It was 11 years ago. Just so your listeners know, I'm sitting here in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm turning 47 tomorrow, on April 13th, 2024. And I'm 6'7". I weigh about 222 pounds. I'm pretty lean and pretty fit right now. 11 years ago, though, I was up at 283 pounds. I was not quite so lean. I was not quite so fit. I was eating out every day, just rich food like wings and rich sauces and the kind of stuff. When I say rich food, I don't mean like I was eating it like Del Frisco's every night, but I mean that I was eating like really good food from a restaurant, from the appetizer menu. I was eating all that stuff every day. And I was having a cocktail or three, normally a beer every night. And my weight ballooned up. And I had achieved some level of financial success. And that was it. I didn't know what was next. I wasn't married yet. I didn't have children yet. I didn't know. And just from that person 11 years ago, I'm so glad that future me, which is now present me, I'm so glad that I adopted the mentality that you just said, is that if you haven't been working out for a while, okay, a little patience and grace with yourself. You can get back and get started. You can do it again. If you're at a low part right now, I hear you. I empathize with you, dear listener. And let's get back on the horse. How do we do that? One step at a time. What's the soonest small step we can take? And anyone can do it. And if you're in Lawrence's community, this Lions community of leaders who have overcome a number of things. If you haven't heard, I mean, I'm sure you know Lawrence's story. You can come listen on my podcast and listen to it because it's a fantastic story. But overcoming this hard stuff, it starts with that one simple, soon decision that you can make right now. What are you going to do in the next month, the next week, the next day? What are you going to do the next hour? And what are you going to do now while you're listening to this to commit to that next step? All right, that's the challenge. All right.
Yeah, so it's always,
you got me excited over here, Lawrence. I'm pretty fired up. Talking to you fires me up. I need more Lawrence standing in my life, more cowbell. This is pretty cool.
Let me ask you, Matt, because I'd love your definition. So there's the word Polyana, which means you're like excessively optimist. It's almost like an insult. It's like a silly optimism. You're not very realistic. And then the way you define eternal optimist is not someone that's always happy. That's kind of a child's definition. Can you explain how you define eternal optimist?
I certainly will. And I'll just start with Polyana first, because you said the words. And Polyana to me is like maybe what you might call toxic positivity, where it's the person just puts a smile on no matter what. And underneath, they're in pain and stuff's really hard, but they fake it till they make it. I mean, fake it till you make it when you're new in cold calls and making sales. But fake it till you make it as a long-term life strategy, compartmentalize all the pain and the fear and just put it in the back of your mind. That will blow up and explode at some point. That will cause early heart attacks and death. I know this. That's happened in my family. I know I was on that path. So I don't believe in that whole Pollyanna concept. That's toxic positivity. Eternal optimism to me is optimism with optimism itself. Is seeing things through a positive lens. So I can see hard stuff. I can see life's challenges through a lens of there's something that could be good about this. You know, what is it? I say eternal optimism is we've developed this mechanism inside of us that empowers us to not only see things through a positive lens, not only see hard stuff through a lens of what's the gift in the moment. How can I use this to my advantage? How can I use this to model for my kids? How can I use this to stand up and show others that it's possible that they too can make a comeback? Right? What is your mechanism for consistently learning and taking all the hard stuff and learning from it? So the eternal part is a constant curiosity and learning from everything that comes onto your plate. So this smile right here from ear to ear, baby, it's genuine that when the hard stuff comes, like when I had one of my daughters yesterday was literally screaming at the top of her lungs about something. I don't know what it was. I could only hear the scream. I'm on someone else's podcast recording and I could see it right there. All right. And I wasn't not happy that was happening. But internally, I'm happy because I can look at things not as they are in this moment. I look at them on a timeline, Lawrence, and I know that even though she was upset and she had an emotional outburst, she's having fewer of those now than she was 2 years ago, than she was 1 year ago. And as she is starting to grow up, those are fewer and far between. So in the lens of time, we're winning. We're making progress. In the lens of the moment, it's really challenging. It's hard. And I can be really sad about it, mad about it, upset. So the eternal optimism is a way to see things through a lens where I'm constantly learning and I'm seeing more of the timeline like this and the progress that we're making. If we're making positive progress, great. But I want to celebrate that. Let's keep doing more of that. If we're not making positive, if it's going backwards or it's neutral, great. Because that's a data point that informs me of what I've been doing right now is not working. And or maybe everything I've tried is the most that I can try. And now it's no longer on me. And I simply got to be patient, present with the other amazing human in front of me. But either way, I'm constantly learning and I'm looking at things on a timeline, not just right now in the moment. Because from moment to moment, we can have highs and lows, but on a timeline where we're constantly set on making progress and constantly set on how do we take all these hard things or these perceived challenges and turn them to our advantage. Look at that on a positive timeline, my friends. And I promise you, there'll be an opportunity to have a few more smiles and a little bit more inner peace, a little bit less stress.
I got to be honest, when we first connected and I realized your podcast was called The Eternal Optimist, I was very, I knew it would be kindred spirits because those words mean a lot to me too. I think I wrote this down. I think it was from your book. The lens on which I see the universe is just a lens. So I love that because we can choose which lens we want to see. And I remember hearing someone saying it's a very stoic approach to, the Stoics were not about, it's not, happiness is not
yes.
if your life is a certain way. Happiness is the decision you choose to see. So for instance, I'll give an example to the listeners. If you're in a good marriage and your wife comes home and she sees you with your feet up, drinking a beer, watching TV, she'll think, oh, look at my husband. I'm so glad he's taking a bit of time for himself. He's putting his feet up. I know how hard he works. He must be exhausted, and she'll be happy. If you're in a bad marriage, the same exact situation, she'll walk in and she'll say, look at this piece of shit. Look at him just sitting there drinking beer, lazy. He's not getting his work done. It's the same. So it's not the action. It's the lens that she's seeing the action through. And I think that's so powerful because we get to choose how we want to see the world. And the way you just described is you said, I'm going to have I'm not going to look at just the actual moment. I'm going to zoom out and see. And I think I look at anytime now that I wish someone had told me this when I was younger, but anytime you're at some kind of crossroads in your life and you're facing a decision or you're saying, do I go all in and risk this opportunity and burn my ships or do I not? The easiest answer is just say, what would my future self want me to do? Like in 5-10 years, which of these two scenarios will I be happy with? And that for me, that always gives me the answer. It's just because you're zooming out and you're seeing it from a bigger perspective.
I'm almost speechless with not knowing what to say because you just said something so profound. I hope that the listeners heard it. I'll translate what I heard. I heard a thinking time question, a journaling question. What I heard was, what am I committed to doing today that my future self will thank me for? An example might be this. As an early entrepreneur, I did really well in business and I didn't know a thing about paying taxes and structuring companies, didn't know anything about that. So I just didn't do it. And by the time I came to my late 20s, I had to settle for that and account for that and write a big check. And I carried a lot of shame and guilt around that for years. So I solved that. And then I got to a place where, I could do my taxes. And then I got into a phase for about 10 years where I pushed it off and did the extension every time. I took a lot of penalties, a lot of interest, and I always waited till the last minute right before tax day. Put in like a 12-hour Saturday, a 7-hour Sunday, and try to get all this stuff together. And it was very stressful and challenging. So when I started asking myself that question on Halloween of 2018, what's the one thing I'm committed to doing today that my future self will thank me for? I started what I call a best practice that every single day, 7 days a week, I will take between 10 and 15 minutes and I will do one thing that will help me progress my cause. And the cause could be removing stress. It could be removing that shame or guilt. It could be, towards the family, towards the business. I started to take 10 to 15 minutes a day, Lawrence, and get ahead on taxes. And within 3 weeks, I was ahead on taxes and have never filed for an extension since. And now we've got a system that we use that's totally ahead of things on taxes. I've already paid the tax for this year. I paid it a couple weeks ago, so we're all set. The point is this. What's the thing that I'm committed to doing today that my future self will thank me for? Apply that, my friends. You're looking for a hack, a tactic, something that can help you lean more into the lion's way, to the leader's way. It's solve your biggest challenges. You don't have to do it all at once. Just take a few minutes a day. All right. A few minutes a day with that question can make monumental change. Right. So again, thank you for inspiring with that question you started with.
It's what you're saying, a few minutes a day. It's powerful because it's compounded. And I think that everyone knows about compounded interest in finance, but it's the same with good habits. Like that it doesn't have to be, you don't have to fix your life today, but just a couple of minutes spending time to improve yourself, work on things, like you said, removing guilt and shame and just trying to be the better you. Over time, that's going to compound to great things. And I feel like that's the biggest problem that I know that I see with people is they're on step 3 and they're looking at step 50 and they're intimidated because there's 47 steps. They're like, I don't see how I'm going to get there. Yeah. But it's like, just take a step back and just focus on step 4, 5, and 6, and then over time, you're going to be climbing the ladder to the life you want to be. But it's going to take some time.
Yes. And a little thing for me, I don't ever say but, but when I do, it's intentional. But to me is like a word that's like a pessimist word. It's a negative word. It's even a perfectionist controlling word. So yes, I totally agree with everything you say. And to build on that, what's your best practice, team? What is your mechanism, your consistent action you do over and over and over again that removes your obstacles, takes things out of your way? I mean, Lawrence and I are dancing around at topic, talking about it. We're offering options here that you can use to your advantage. Comes down to that simple thing. What action are you going to take? What are you committed to doing? And who are you going to share that with so you have an accountability partner? I think anybody on this podcast you're listening to right now, we are a group of high achievers that really want to impact the world. In order to do that, what's that one thing you can commit to each and every day? And maybe some of you already have that. Maybe some of you have that. You're like, well, Matt, I'm already doing that. Okay, great. How are you leveling that up? How are you impacting others and mentoring others do the exact same thing? Imagine what happens. Lawrence and I, we have a tactic every day we do that helps us to enrich, strengthen, lead our communities, help our families, help people we serve. Everyone out there listening right now, what's that one thing you could do today for yourself, for your family, and for those you care about that can help all of us move forward together? That's a real challenge, and I challenge everyone out there to do that. So, Lawrence, you get me fired up. Every time I'm around you, I get a little bit more fired up. So this is good. Yeah, it brings up, I had a gentleman on the podcast this morning. We were talking about, the old Tony Robbins thing or the Deepak Chopra. I don't know who came up with this first. Maybe Dale Carnegie. You're the average of the 5 people you're around. So audit yourself. Who are those people we're spending time with? And are they challenging you with questions like these on a daily basis?
I think that
power and rich.
Matt, I think that idea is very powerful. You're the average of the main people you spend your time with. And that's something that I've always found so difficult, where I've got good friends who are, I don't want to say they're lost, but they're definitely not where they want to be. But they have I think their heart is so pure. And I know if they had $20 and I needed it, they'll give it to me. They'll give you the shirt off their back. They're those kind of people, just really good humans. But they're not necessarily, it's not like they call me every day and they get me fired up and I'm all inspired, because they're kind of working on themselves. And it's a mixture of having those people in your life where they're just, almost like legacy friends that they've been in your life a long time and you genuinely care about them. And also being around people that inspire you, that push you, that tell you, I'm lucky I've got, some friends that be like, what are you doing? Like you said 3 years ago, you're going to do this, and you still haven't done it yet. Like, you want those kind of friends too, that tell you the uncomfortable things you don't want to hear. And I feel like sometimes I'm that friend that is annoying because I tell them that too much. And it's that balance, because sometimes your friends just want to vent and they just want your buddy to be there. And they don't always want like, well, you should be doing this. And you know what I mean, Matt? It's that balance.
Yeah. And again, transparently, I share that I had a friend one time tell me that, Matt, I don't really want to hang out with you that much anymore because I feel so judged every time I'm around you.
Wow.
I feel that I'm not able to keep up because you're always like pushing and asking me the hard questions. And I don't want to be coached. I just want to hang out and be around my friends. But I feel like you're always like this taskmaster is always pushing everyone to break through.
Yeah.
And I thought about that, Lawrence. Is that how I show up? Is that how I want to show up intentionally? And if I'm hearing that feedback, do I want to change as a result of that? Or am I okay with who I am right now? A lot of stuff comes up when I hear this feedback from friends. So I think it goes both ways. Like I'm thinking I have some friends that may not be on a similar path of, personal growth development, running companies and whatnot. And again, I don't judge them for that now. I'm totally fine with that now. I hang out probably less of those friends now than I used to, right? But it's a fine line we walk. There's no perfect answer, right? It's like, I don't want to be flippant or very casual with relationships that I have depth with, so I may not proactively like reach out to go hang out all the time anymore, but I don't want to shut them completely out of my life because we have a history and I want to honor that. And, I have one friend in particular that has been friends for almost 2 decades, and they still like to go out to the bar. They still like to, smoke and drink and do all that. And I let go of those things. No judgment again, but I let go of those things a while ago. And now they have actually come into a more favorable position in their business. So now they're running a large company, whereas before a decade ago, they were living check to check. So now they've achieved some level of success financially. So we can talk more at a business level. They're still doing some of those things that I don't really do anymore. So we still keep in touch. I just don't hang out as much. So for the listeners out there, I don't think there's a perfect answer. Some would say, surround yourself with better people, different people. Maybe. But I will intentionally look to spend more time with Lawrence's. I will intentionally look to spend more time with people that I feel really speak my love language and help me, inspire me in some way. Then there's the humble leader, the humble part of me that says, part of my job is to show up for people and be present with them and simply just be, and that just being part can be something that inspires them, something that helps them. So I have mixed feelings and thoughts on this one. Still working out my own answers. I'm glad you brought it up, though. I think a podcast are a great place to sort out your stuff. I'm talking to Dr. Kelly Flanagan today, man. He says to me the following. I think I kept the quote here. He says, Matt, the universal language is vulnerability and authenticity. Right. So if you really want to connect with people, then that's the universal language to connect with anyone, is to be authentic and real. That's the most personal is the most universal, is how he finished the sentence.
I love that.
So,
yeah, talking back to what we were saying about being more intentional at the beginning of this conversation I think when there's that lovely book, I think the name was Bronnie Ware, the author. I know you're a huge reader, but she talked about the top 5 things, regrets of the dying. And at the end of your life, she dealt with all these people at the end of their life and what they would say and what they would be thinking about. And it was always the same things. It was always, I wish I had spent more time with people I love and not, overtime at the office. It was, I wish I had done what I wanted to in my heart, not what people expected me to do. And I think they're such good things to think about, not at the end of your life, but when you're in the middle of your life. I've had this ever since I was in my 20s. I've had this fear of being an 80-year-old man with grandkids at my feet, successful on paper, but having this feeling inside of me that I didn't live the life that I really wanted to live. And that was one of the reasons that I gave up my financial career and I left so much money on the table to pursue fighting, because that was my real passion. And that's the reason that I try and do everything now is it's so easy. I think humans, we've evolved to always seek more. So they always say the happiest person is not the person who's objectively the most successful, it's the person that's improving. So it's so easy for entrepreneurs to get caught up in the mindset where you want to make money to live a good life, but then a lot of people just, the only metric they use is the financial metric at the expense of all these other things. And then they only realize at the end of their life that I was chasing the wrong goal. And so I just, one of the reasons I like you so much and your book was great because it really resonated was the guy was, that the main central character was uber successful entrepreneur, but you can just see how he's letting his, family fall by the wayside. and he's upsetting all these people around
Yep.
him, and his friends are getting alienated. And these are just such good reminders. And I got to tell you, Matt, there was a bit in there that really got me emotional. And it was that he always felt like he was chasing his dad's approval, but all his dad wanted was for him to be happy. And I don't have that same thing. I haven't been chasing my dad's approval, but there was some distance between my dad and I. And he came last week and I finished the book, I think 2 days before he came. And the relationship with me and my parents had been a little bit distant the last few years. I've been super busy and I felt like they were kind of going through some stuff. And the last time I saw them at Christmas, we didn't have a great week and I wasn't my best self. And we definitely felt very alienated. And it did upset me. And I felt like, I'm at a stage in my life where I have to focus on me and my family right now. I was going through some personal stuff and some career stuff. And reading that really reminded me that I don't want to wait. Actually got very emotional reading it. And I just don't want to, my parents are at that age where we don't know how long they have. And I don't want to ever wait to have this distance between us and then have regrets later on. And I felt like we had a really good week. They came and it was really wonderful. And so I guess thank you it was the perfect time to read it. And those few pages where he's talking about the relationship with his dad, I guess it meant a lot. It's like there's certain either a conversation with somebody or a book that can be so impactful. And a lot of time it's not actually the content as much as it's the perfect timing. And so for me, that was the perfect timing. So I just wanted to share that with you and thank you for that.
Thank you for sharing that, Lawrence. And the book is a true story. It's a creative nonfiction story of my life. And I changed the names and the places to protect the privacy of the people that have been in my life. But it's a true story. And I'll go back in time and share the context because I believe your story and my story have things that there are parallels. For me, I had this successful business going. And I remember that I got my first, what I would call a big paycheck. And I called home and I shared with my dad that I got a big paycheck. I was very proud. I was very excited. I was looking for him to say something. And without much emotion, he's like, "Hey, good job, son. And I hope that you won't do anything dumb tonight. I hope you don't go out and drink and drive or anything." And, I'm not a drinker and driver. I can tell you what I do, Dad. I don't think you're going to approve. And he said to me, "Well, what do you mean?" Whatever, just don't drink and drive. And I said, "Well, I don't drink. I smoke." And I told him that I was going to smoke that night. And when I say smoke, I mean smoke marijuana. That was like 20 years ago when I had this conversation. And he didn't take that well. We didn't talk for a long time. And in 2005, I was talking to my mom about this recently. She's still with me, thank goodness. And she didn't even know that this was the catalyst to this conversation happening. She didn't remember it, but she kind of brokered the peace. We didn't talk for a while. We're both kind of big, stubborn type A personalities, didn't know how to say sorry and really open up and go first in a personal setting. So she got us back together to play in a 3-day golf tournament for Memorial Day week in 2005. We had the best time. We saw each other at 10:30 that morning on that Saturday morning. And Lawrence, within 30 minutes, we let go of all the stuff that built up. It was like instantaneously. I only saw my dad cry twice in his whole life. And I saw a little bit of emotion in his eye, like a little bit of wetness. And of course, I got a little tear in my eye. And we played this great 3-day golf tournament all that weekend. Like let go of all the stuff. I'm so glad that we let go and we had a good time. And on Monday night, I drove back from Atlanta to my home. And on Tuesday morning, I got the call at 7:06 a.m. from my mom. And it's like, "Hey, Matthew, come home. Your dad just died." And when that happened, I was so grateful that we'd had the chance to clear the air. Okay, so talk about optimism for a second. I was a Polyana optimist going to say that's a positive day. Yeah, if you say that's a positive day, that's complete bullshit. There's nothing good about that day. It's the worst day of my life. I'm an eternal optimist. Was there anything good about that day? In that moment, no. Not a single thing was good about that. And now, over the course of time, what's good about that day? It still sucked. I wish I'd have it back for sure, The good thing about that day is that my mom and I are much closer now. The good thing about that day is that when I think of my father, I've actually learned how to be emotionally intelligent, how to express emotion, how to cry, how to be with people really presently because of the things that happened as a result of that tragedy that day. So all that hard stuff that's opposing our goals and opposing us right now, that's really hard, that's actually the raw materials that are going to help us get what we might want most if we let it. So that hard stuff with my dad, the hard stuff with your dad, that had to happen for us to get to where we're at right now. And I'm glad that you have the lens to know that you weren't having a great day, that you've got stuff. And I had the lens, at least after he passed, I learned how to appreciate the lens of the hard stuff so I can get to the place where I can impact people more now. And as far as the book goes, for those of you out there, you get it on Amazon. It's called The Eternal Optimist. It's never too late. If you have any stuff you're trying to work through, whether it's identify your blind spots, reconnect with people that are important in your life, learn to let go of things that are only through your lens. I'm doing it for everyone else. In reality, you're doing it for yourself. And people tell you this, you just don't hear them. If you want to let go of stuff, then don't just get one copy, get two copies, one for you and one for your loved one, and do it together. Do the exercise together of reading from a person who's genuinely a good human being. You get into their mind and it sounds like they're just a bad person. And I don't think anybody that's listening to this podcast is a bad person. And we may have stuff in our own narrative that holds us back. If you want to break free from that narrative, and get to know it, get comfortable with it. And you can do that by reading a very transparent accounting of someone who's trying to be vulnerable and trying to let you in that this is the real stuff. Like, I'll give you one more example. I've got a client who I look at this client, and this person, they started a company in college. They're very successful financially. They're wealthy. They don't have to work if they don't want to. Probably one of the best looking people I've ever coached. If you look at just straight up physical appearance, great looking, great shape. They've got all the toys. They've got a great looking spouse. All this stuff is good. And our conversations are all about their inner narrative because they have a real tough time. They're always constantly feeling like they're unattractive. They're feeling like they're poor all the time. Right? So all of us have our stuff. My friends, please lean into the book. Get a copy or two for you and your friends. If you have a small company, you get it for your people in your company and work on your company stuff. But yeah, I think a lot just came out there, but I appreciate you, mentioning your dad. And if there's anything to take away today, people, take away a copy of the book, but also take away, if there's someone that you need to make it right with, whether it was on them or it's on you, somebody's got to go first. And I encourage you to take that step. You will not be disappointed that you gave it your best effort now while you still can. It's never too late.
Matt, I'm so sorry about your dad, but that's really beautiful that you managed to reconnect before, so you didn't have to live with that regret. I'm so thankful, and it's the idea of just the older I get, the more I don't want to waste. I know how precious time is, and I know that we don't know how long we have. We all have, death sentences. We just don't know how long it's going to be, but there's so many times you hear someone that has they're terminally ill and they only have, a year or two left. And they say it's the best thing that ever happened to them because it's given them perspective and appreciation. And that's been my biggest change, I guess, the last few years is I just want to let go of anything that's just negative because life is too short. And I had this, sorry, I know people have heard the story before, but I had this contractor who screwed me over and it was a lot of money, huge amount of money. And I had friends and family invested and it was just this awful situation. And I let go of all bitterness towards him too. I'm just like, life is too short. Like it's not going to impact him. It's just impacting me. And you know what? If anything, I'm going to be thankful because he's given me a lot of wisdom and I learned a lot of mistakes and I've got to take more ownership. And I'm gonna see what I did wrong as opposed to just blame it all. It's so easy to blame other people. And so I think it's such a good message. And I love you mentioned earlier, you touched on it about being kind to yourself too. There's so many times, especially type A people, you and your main protagonist in the book, they're so much harder on themselves than they would ever be with a best friend. Like if a best friend called me with some of the things that I'm upset about with myself about, I would be way nicer to him and I would be way more sympathetic and compassionate than I would be for myself. And that's the other thing too, is don't be hard on yourself. If you make every mistake in the book and you've done everything wrong, it's okay. That's past. Today you can make little changes. Don't be so hard on yourself either. That's something that I love to spread that message because I see so many people who are so hard on themselves. And it's like, listen, if you've done bad things and things that you're not proud of, unfortunately we've evolved to do these things. Like, don't be so hard on yourself. Like, it's a constant battle, and the modern world is almost against you. It's an active battle to fight against. So I love the fact that you mentioned that too, brother. I know you have to run, Matt. I'm really glad you plugged your book. I'm going to put links on the show notes. I'd love to do a part 2, because we didn't even talk about your accident, and I really want to talk about your mindset, how you got over that. But look, we'll have plenty more conversation in the future. And I'm really thankful for you. You always give me wisdom, and you spread positivity. So thank you, Matt. Really.
Real pleasure, my friend. And just to give a teaser for the audience, the accident that Lawrence is referring to is I was going down a zip line and it broke. Just imagine that. That's the teaser for next time. Zip line and it broke and I fell to the ground and I'm still alive. So everything that happened after that, that's next. But thank you, Lawrence. I love you, man. Appreciate you inviting me on today. And dear listeners, listen to this man. He's got some good stuff. Listen to Lawrence, and thank you, sir.
I love you, Matt. Thank you so much, brother.